You know what they say about duelists who play big decks? The bigger the deck, the bigger the brain. And we've also got large cards. So most of you guys are probably well aware now that I'm a pretty big fan of playing Chaos decks, as by the fact I've done 2 videos already on them. So I thought, what better excuse to make a 3rd video than to just stuff some Tearlament into there, and just see how the deck list goes. And as it turns out, pretty damn well. So here's today's deck list. Now just a reminder before I get to the deck list, if you're enjoying today's video and want to see more content just like this in the future, especially if you're a returning viewer, it's apparently about 50% of people watching this or even subscribed to the channel, yet nearly all of you returning viewers who have seen my content before. So if you find yourself keep coming back to the channel and see more content just like this in the future, remember to leave a like on this video and consider subscribing to the channel down below. Alright, let's get into this deck list. So for today's deck list specifically, I won't be going through each of the cards individually or talking about the deck list all that much, simply because I've already done a dedicated Tearlament video rather recently, and I've already done multiple Chaos videos recently as well, so it'd be kind of pointless to share with my audience how each of the cards work and talk about all the cards, when you guys basically know what they do already. That's kind of pointless. But what I will talk about is the advantages over this deck list and the disadvantages over playing standard tier compared to the Chaos Tearlament. So first of all, we'll start with the disadvantages, because there are 2 main ones. The first one is, obviously with a 60 card deck, your deck becomes a lot more inconsistent, especially in getting a hold of specifically the tier cards themselves. Because in a 60 card deck, if you're not opening grass, you're just playing an extra 20 cards, which are just cards that are not going to be Tearlament names. So when you normal summon a card like your Scheiren, you're just not likely to mill 3 to hit one of these tier cards for their various effects. Similarly, your hand trap version of Havnis becomes a lot weaker because obviously during your opponent's turn you activate its effect mill 3, the chance of you hitting a tier card or hitting one of your millers is just significantly lower. The other main downside is specifically in regards to the mirror match, because in the mirror match, these cards here, these sort of shufflers, become insanely prominent, as they're basically the win condition for the matchup. You shuffle away your opponent's Tearlament cards when they try to fuse, and they just lose the game. And again, the chance of you hitting these on your mills is just going to be a lot lower when you're playing a 60 card deck, from when you're using your hand trap to mill stuff, or when you're milling your cards from your Kelbek during your opponent's turn. You're just not likely to see these cards as often, so the mirror match might become not necessarily harder, but a lot of your standard win conditions for it are just not going to be there. Now let's talk about the upsides. So the first thing to note with the Chaos deck specifically is that its end boards are just going to be better, undeniably better. But honestly, that can be seen as more of a win more strat, since Tearlament boards are obviously going to end on something pretty decent anyway, but it is undeniable this deck does end on better end boards, because you'll end on things like Baron de Fleur, your Sword Soul. Already those 2 cards are generally not summoned in tier all that often. You'll have your standard tier stuff, you have Colossus, which is something that is definitely not summoned in tier. You'll still end on your Sprite Elf, things like Time Thief or Abyss Dweller, all the standard tier stuff, but with a lot more big dudes as well, so it does end on better end boards. The second advantage of the Chaos deck is that it has just a lot more ways to mill, because obviously you have your Punk stuff, which goes into your Chaos Ruler, goes into your Zombie Vampire, and that's just a lot more mills you don't normally have access to. And of course we have Grass's Greener as well. Another advantage of this particular deck is it's a little bit weak, a little bit stronger I mean, into some of the counter cards that are generally used into it. For example, D-Shifter. If your opponent activates D-Shifter in response to like your Grass's Greener, a lot of the time you're just going to banish a copy of a Thunder Dragon, and in doing so you'll end on a Thunder Dragon Colossus, which normally tier, if your opponent activates D-Shifter, your turn just ends and you can't really play the game, whereas this variant does actually end on something that might be a little bit hard for your opponent to deal with. And the final upside for this deck, which is honestly my favourite reason for playing it, is the fact that we have 2 gigantic boys that make it so goddamn easy to go second. Because these 2 dudes, if you don't know, the more cards you have banished, the more attack these cards gain. So going second, you can try to go into your standard like Baron de Fleur plays or your standard tier plays, but at the end of the day, the idea is just to get 4 monsters on the field for your Link monster, or trying to get your perfect amount of material for your Synchro on the field, and you just win the game from there. there, because you're going to banish a billion cards with Snow, you're going to banish a billion cards with your Necrofaces, you can have so much stuff banished that these 2 cards by themselves are just outright win conditions. So if your opponent manages to disrupt all your plays and all you're left with is maybe just sort of 1 Thunder Dragon on the field, a Snow, and maybe a Link 2, all of a sudden you just win the game outright. And you'll see during the replays, that is a very common way to win with Chaos. Now honestly, if I was to tell you which variant of Tear is better, is it the standard one or the Chaos variant, it's probably just going to be standard because the consistency generally just outweighs everything and it is just going to be more consistent. But in saying that, no matter what variant of Tear you're going to be playing at the moment, I'm going to be honest, it's going to be a strong variant. You'll see from the tournament results, there are so many different ways to play Tearlaments, and all of them are doing well, because the Tearlament cards are just busted, so whilst they're busted and they're not getting banned, feel free to play just literally any variant you like, as all of them are going to be strong and are going to win games. So without further ado, let's just jump into some replays. So today I have 3 replays to share with you guys, all of which were gathered in Diamond 5, which if you're wondering why there wasn't a rank up shown here, it's because I've only played 5 games with this deck, and I won 4 of them. This deck list is definitely good enough to climb with, it's just I didn't play that many games, because, well, it didn't take that long to get the replays for the video, as I got everything I wanted to show here, an insane going first, an insane going second, and of course a replay that shows off a little bit of the D-Shifter interaction. This one isn't the greatest replay, so we'll get out of the way first. I just wanted to show off that this deck list can play through things like D-Shifter a lot better than standard Tearlaments, as you'll see. Alright. So like I said, this replay, it's not the greatest replay, so don't take it as some sort of insane gameplay or talk shit or something, I don't know. It's just a very, very standard sort of, my opponent bricked, he activated D-Shifter, but we could still play through it. Alright. It would be better if this is a replay going first, to be honest, if you just use D-Shifter then. Alright, so we activate my Punk stuff, getting a search, grabbing my dude. Activating Foxy Chain, and in doing so, he chains his D-Shifter. And this would normally end your turn for Tear. You wouldn't be able to play any further, basically. But in this case, I can actually choose to try to banish a bunch of cards from the top of my deck, because in doing so, can potentially hit your Thunder Dragons. And we actually hit 2 of them here. Pretty lucky, actually. And my opponent conceded instantly, because those 2 cards, one of them would summon a dude, which you can use to link summon or synchro or whatever, and the other one would search for a dude, which brings back a Thunder Dragon, which we could turn into a Colossus, or just use as beatdown to try to hit your opponent in the face. So there's a good chance that even after your opponent has activated a D-Shifter or a Dimensional Fissure or something, you can still sort of play the game, especially if they actually bricked or you're going first, because Thunder Dragon Colossus does make it really damn hard for your opponent to play the game in general. Alright, then we have 2 actual replays. These last 2 are just great examples of going first and second. Absolute montage worthy. Yeah, you're going to be seeing a lot of cool shit in these last 2. One of them I think was a Tearlaments mirror match, and the other was Exo Sister, I believe, which is meant to be a counter deck, but it's generally only a counter if they open their D-Shifter or go first. So, alright, so I take my Scream, using my Ogre. Ogre summoning my Ziyadman. Ziyadman going to be searching. Basically, I was trying to see if my opponent had any Ash Blossoms first, which is why I use this. Alright, sending to then go into my dude, bring out my level 5, so I'm going to Chaos. Chaos mills 5, adds 1 to hand. Dear Note going to grave brings back a level 8, which is great, because the 2 level 8s are then going to go into your rank 8, as you'll see in a second. Alright, milling 5. Hoping to hit a light or a dark, which we did. Adding the Tearlament to hand, milling a whole bunch, and then activating a whole bunch of effects. Alright. Sending 1, or special summoning first, discarding, sending 1. Getting my Sulliek. Vanguard, mill 5. Merrli then going to do a fusion summon. Because we summoned a Tear, we can now activate our Scream. Getting another fusion summon off our Scheiren. And of course getting a Centigrade off our Reinoheart. And then milling another 5 cards. I actually got some insane mills off that first hit there. Alright, sending our final fusion effect. Going to our Kitkallos, of course. That way we can instantly fusion summon into our anti-Nibiru card, which I think we've already done 5 summons, but I don't know, I just summoned it anyway. It's generally good to get this card out fairly quickly, as it's generally part of your end board anyway. Alright, then Fusion Summoning once again, going into a copy of my Kitkallos. This is because I still haven't done its mill effect yet, and milling cards is pretty good for this deck list, as you'll see. So, popping itself, summoning to the field, milling a whole bunch of stuff. These two are now going to our rank 8, which is going to mill another bunch of stuff and potentially special summon. So hopefully hitting a level 2 off this is the best, which we did, hitting our Herald. This is a absolute banger replay, by the way. Getting a 6 and a 4, so we can go into our Baron de Fleur. It's now very safe from any hand traps, if he even had any left. Gonna of course summon out our Snow, which is banishing some stuff, hitting Necrofaces, banishing a whole bunch of more stuff. These two can now make our Cross Sheep. We have a Hawk in hand, of course, so we can get our Colossus on the field, which will activate the Cross Sheep's effect to buff the field, as well as bring back a monster from grave. Alright, Cross Sheep reviving a monster, Hawk getting a search. The Dark Story doesn't actually get much of a search here, because there's nothing really to summon anymore. We've already done a Thunder Dragon stuff. That's good for follow-up next turn, I guess. Alright, bringing back our Dude. This will give us an 8 and a 2 to make another 10. And we're still not done there, we've still got one final step to make. Bring back our Snow with our Cross Sheep, so we make our Link 2 on the field. And now we're set up for the opponent's turn. We have a Trap card, which is a Negate. We have a Negate for special summons. We have a Negate for literally anything. We have a Banish, potentially. We have your opponent can't actually add cards to hand. And we have Sprite Elf to bring back a copy of your level 2 at any point to pop your opponent's stuff with your Elder Entity Natus. Also, you could also obviously bring back Snow, which is why I've kind of left a slot open. Alright. And that is an end board that is not exactly uncommon for this deck. I know I've sort of got some pretty banger mills with this, but this is a very standard end board. My opponent actually had a Darkroller, which is pretty crazy, but another advantage over this deck compared to your standard Chaos deck, as you would have seen from previous videos, is that Darkroller doesn't have as much of an impact because we have the Tearlament Trap card most games, as you'll see. Oh, just realized I have my alerts on. I'm not going to bother with that, we'll just leave them on. So opponent summons out his Mikhalis. I can now activate my Snow to flip this thing face down before it gets its effect off, and if it decides to chain to it, I'd have a Tearlaments Sulliek ready for it. He tries to call by the Grave of Snow. I don't care. If you're wondering why the way I banished some sort of cards here that you don't normally want to have banished, it's because I have like 3 seconds left on the clock or something ridiculous. Standard sort of tier gameplay. Alright, tries to use its effect, I'm going to negate that by sending this dude to the graveyard, who then will just revive himself anyway, unnegating himself, I'm pretty sure. I don't know though, because of, yeah, I had like 2 seconds left on the clock, so I just turned my toggle off and basically said no to every activation. And my opponent actually didn't leave the game. He sat there and waited for his clock to time out. He was very salty over that one. Not that I can blame him, that was pretty, messed up, actually winning through Darkroller. Alright, final replay. This is the going second replay, and this is the sort of replays that I think are the main strength of this deck compared to standard tiers. I think going second with this deck is just a lot stronger. You do have probably less hand traps than standard, but your two big dudes make up for that in easy win conditions. Alright, so this dude's going to do a bunch of milling. We quite like milling, so we're going to agree. We're also going to do some milling for him. Alright. Oh god, the effects that go off this game. Already 12 cards in grave, already 10 cards in grave. Decking out with this deck, by the way, is quite easy with Necrofaces if you guys don't know. It's a fairly common way to win as well with it. Although it's a bit harder in tier format where everyone seems to be running the shufflers. Oh my god. Chain 5. So obviously he's stopping my fusion effects, which is, by the way, why I only used one of them in case my opponent did do this. I didn't want to just removing both my fusion effects already, so I made sure to only use one of the effects. Alright. So getting a search from my hand trap. Milling a whole bunch. Getting a potential fusion summon, unfortunately he stopped it. Oh my god. 21 cards in grave. He only has 12 cards left in deck. Yeah, decking this guy out would have been pretty easy. Although he does have some shuffling cards that sort of protect him a little bit. But if you can bait them out or make an Abyss Dweller or something, you can sort of get around them a little bit. Alright, activates triple tactics, forcing me to use my Maxx early, which is not great, but does mean that he's probably not going to do much special summoning, which is good. 13 cards left. I've still got 39, I'm set. Alright, using his Diviner. Sending his Shizu card, which is obviously a counter to some of the stuff I'm going to be trying to do. I top deck a Tear card, which is pretty good. Because it means I can automatically just do a bunch of milling off of this. This is already 6 mils. And of course we still have Snow, which you're about to see in a second. So do a bit of milling. I think I missed, if I remember. Yeah, so I just have to use Snow instead. Which is fine, because I'm just going to do some Thunder Dragon-y stuff. My opponent's going to shuffle. Which is fine, because Snow doesn't care. Snow just keeps using its effect over and over. The fact this card isn't banned is ridiculous. This card is insane. This is the only reason the Chaos deck works, by the way. If this card was banned, it just wouldn't work. This card is too damn good. Alright, so Necroface doing some more banishing. Could buy another 5 cards. I think I actually hit both of his shufflers here. Alright, give me a Surge and a special summon. That's a guaranteed Colossus already. I think I hit both his Ashizas on that anyway. Alright, going to my Cross Sheep. So obviously I can summon out a level 2 from Grave. Alright, there's the Colossus. Activating Cross Sheep, bringing back a level 2. He now activates his Havnis' effect. Which is completely fine. I don't really care what the stuff he summons here. It does make the back row active, which is a bit scary. But thankfully, because we're using Herald's effect, we can sort of bait out some of this back row, since we can, at any moment, send our level 4, which will pop some stuff. So there now he's doing a bunch of Tearlament summoning during my turn. I don't care too much. Like I said during the decklist portion, the whole goal of my deck is not necessarily to end on some sort of big negati dudes or anything standard like that. It's basically just to get all my opponent's activation stuff out of the way, all of his interaction, then just end on at least 4 materials on field to go into my big Link 4. Or go into my smaller dude, my Sword Soul card, if I can't do that. Or just end on both of them, which I think I do in this replay. So opponent's going to go into his Kitkallos, then use the Kitkallos to go into his next fusion summon. Alright. Once we get through all these effects. Goddamn Tear is so broken. Alright, going to his Rikalos. Not sure why I chose Rikalos over the other negate, but I don't think it really mattered, whatever he summoned. Using these 2 dudes on field, going into a copy of my Chen Ying. Opponent apparently has no effects into this. He could have negated my Snow here, but it wouldn't have mattered because we can just use the Snow again. Obviously getting a banish off of this. Bringing back the Snow. And there we have our Link 4 if we want it. Which, by the way, this card was already going to be lethal anyway. We could even made a Link monster here, then banished a whole bunch more with the Snow. Just had absolute giga lethal off just this dude. But just to sort of show off, we're going to go into the big dude as well. Our boy Zeraboros, or Zoroboros, whatever its name is. 10,000 attack, exactly. And he's gone. Alright guys, that's going to do it for today's replays. Hope you guys enjoyed them. If you didn't, leave a like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, hope you guys in the next one. Laters.
Hey, big brother, can I watch SpongeBob?
Shut up, Mokuba. I'm busy flagging YouTube videos to compensate for the fact that I have an extremely small penis.
Oh.